Thank you, Councillor Parker. I do have some additions to the agenda. They are all in-camera verbal items. There'll be items 6.1 to 6.5. First one is meeting with downtown BRZ. Second one is community wellbeing task force. Number 3 is Team Lethbridge. Number 4 is EMS dispatch. And number 5 is city manager update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy City Clerk. Councillor Campbell.
If there's any other, no other questions, I'll ask for the vote.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. As most people know, Community Issues Committee meeting is an opportunity for us to discuss issues of the greater community, issues and projects that are going on in our community. It's not a place or a time to make decisions or rather set direction. Those are done at a future council meeting if it does come to that point. So all decisions directional will be done at a council meeting and not at a CIC. This is an opportunity for us to gather information, ask questions of the experts, and I do believe we have a few experts / consultants on the phone, and I will have Councillor Campbell introduce them when we get to that. So moving right along, we'll now deal with item 4.1. This is Mark Campbell, Councillor Campbell, Councillor, on behalf of Jeff Carlson regarding the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee Functional Planning Update. Councillor Campbell, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Acting Mayor Parker. Appreciate the opportunity here. And just for a little bit of background, funding for both functional planning and detailed design of a performing arts center was approved in 2017 for inclusion in the 2018-2021 CIP. In early 2018, the Performing Arts, or PAC, Steering Committee was established to oversee this work. The PAC Steering Committee is comprised of 5 voting members, 3 members of City Council, which include myself, Councillor Carlson, and Councillor Kaufman, and 2 community members. The community members represent the Allied Arts Council and Performing Arts Center Advocacy Group, respectively. Members of City Administration sit as non-voting members of the Steering Committee and provide support and information as requested. Councillor Carlson chairs the PAC Steering Committee but is unable to attend today's meeting, so in his absence I will be stepping into that role. The PAC Steering Committee spent most of 2018 assessing the 2 past PAC studies, reviewing different theatre types, sizes, and amenities, and touring performance arts facilities in Alberta. In late 2018, the committee established a vision and guiding principle for a new PAC. The vision for a new PAC in Lethbridge is what is a multi-use performing arts and community facility that showcases both emerging and experienced performers. It needs to be a vibrant regional hub that energizes the community and captures the cultural and economic vitality of live artistic performance. The PAC should be active, connected, welcoming, and sustainable. Consultants AMS Planning and Research were selected by the Steering Committee in 2019 to conduct a market feasibility assessment and to develop a business plan for a PAC. AMS Planning and Research was tasked with helping the Steering Committee to develop plans for a facility that would realize the committee's vision for a new PAC. Today, Bill Blake and Jonathan Spangler from AMS Planning and Research will offer a presentation with accompanying report of their work to date. They will summarize their research processes and findings and will discuss operating models for 2 different types of performing arts center. I will turn this over to Bill and Jonathan, and guys, thanks for your patience, and I hope you're being able to see us through your smoke in California. So here's Bill and Jonathan.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. We can see you through the magic of YouTube, but I think 45 seconds after you gesture. And we're hanging in here in California as we're smoking our way through September. It would sure be nice to be with you in Lethbridge, and I'm sorry that we're not. We do have a presentation to share with you today. I will go through it over the next 15 minutes. And if you could go ahead and advance to the slide that has our pictures on it, my picture and Jonathan's, and I'll sort of start there as we work through it. It really has been our pleasure to spend the last year getting to know Lethbridge, and certainly being able to travel there pre-COVID. And both Jonathan and I enjoyed our time there, and we really wish we could be up there with you now. As you know, I'm Bill Blake. I'm joined by Jonathan Spangler. We are with AMS Planning and Research, a consulting firm that works exclusively in the arts and culture and entertainment sector. To complete this planning work, we partnered with Fisher Dax Associates, who are theater designers and planners, and with venue cost consultants, who also specialize in performing arts facility planning, but with a specific focus on capital cost estimating. All of our firms have experience working throughout Canada, and in fact, Fisher Dax worked on the Esplanade Center over in Medicine Hat. I'll go ahead and advance slide. Just this month, AMS celebrated 32 years. In fact, today might be the day. And for most of these years, approximately a half to two-thirds of our work has been in this area of facility planning, feasibility assessments, and business planning for new arts and cultural ventures. I'll go ahead and advance slide. Our research included 3 phases of study and analysis. In the first phase, we researched the market for performing arts activity in the region, including analysis of demographic data, the supply of existing venues and programs, and demand from local performing arts organizations and other prospective content providers. Once an assessment of the market and community factors was completed, we worked with the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee to explore facility scenarios for further study in Phase 2. This included development of site criteria, but consideration of specific sites in Lethbridge was not part of this planning work. Although we would note that people were not at all shy about sharing opinions and ideas with us about where a performing arts center ought to be. Finally, in the third phase, we developed facility descriptions and operating financial forecasts for 2 scenarios, as well as construction estimates, which we'll be sharing with you today. Next slide, please. In putting together this plan, we worked with the committee to analyze 5 key factors: the market, the condition of the arts ecosystem in Lethbridge, funding realities related to earned revenue and operational and capital support, the desired impact of a new performing arts facility sought by stakeholders, and the likely profile of activity in a new venue. Underlying all of these inputs were the committee's previously established guiding principles. When taken all together, we established a direction that led us to the 2 scenarios we will talk about today. Next slide, please. These 4 guiding principles articulate the impact that many in the community are seeking with the development of a new performing arts facility. What these principles envision is a place that is an active and vibrant hub fostering a diverse array of performing arts activity, a place that is connected to the local arts scene that enables collaboration and serves as an anchor for arts and entertainment, a place that is truly welcoming and inclusive of all sectors of this diverse community and creates opportunities for the sharing of culture and dialogue. And finally, a place that is sustainable over the long march of time. As planning consultants, we did our very best to keep these 4 principles front and center as we developed scenarios and forecasts. Next slide, please. As we got to know this community, we tested these guiding principles and explored the topic of arts and arts facility needs and aspirations with a wide range of individuals. We consulted with over 50 and found validation of the committee's principles as we became well acquainted with Lethbridge. These interviews brought to light a community that is seeking to continue developing its cultural life by building on the investments made in the Galt Museum, CASA, the NMAX, and the Yates renovation. Many feel that a venue larger than the Yates that could be of service to local arts organizations, but also be of a size, type, and quality that could feature touring artists from across Canada and from around the globe, would be a logical next step for Lethbridge. There was also a desire to see a new facility contribute to activating the downtown area by establishing an arts and entertainment district, whether that district be established formally or informally. Next slide, please. In considering the market, we looked at several rings around Lethbridge. In studying the data, we believe that the primary market is a 30-minute drive time from central Lethbridge, and that a secondary market exists within an hour-and-a-half drive time. Key headlines from this analysis are that this market is growing, is somewhat younger than the average of the province, that there are a substantial number of family households to be served, and that incomes as well as cost of living are both lower than throughout the province overall. Information you're probably somewhat aware of. Next slide, please. Our analysis of the supply of venues in Lethbridge is not substantially different than what was found 10 years ago when this subject was studied. There is a capacity and quality gap, and access to purpose-built space is limited. As the chart shows, there are a number of multi-purpose spaces in the market area. However, most are below 500 seats. The NMAX Center captures audience capacities greater than 1,100. However, quality of the experience for performances is an issue, particularly in the 1,100 seat configuration. Many of the available performing arts spaces are owned and operated by educational institutions and churches. As you can see, the 5 that are above 500 seating capacity, 3 of them are churches. The Yates Theater and other municipal spaces are dominated by resident companies and repeat rental customers, making existing venues somewhat difficult to access. Next slide, please. To test demand for space, we conducted an online survey. While we did find the greatest demand is for a facility with greater than 500 seats, the demand by local users equated to 144 use days, which we consider to be soft. In 2010, for example, this demand equated to 325 use days. By taking a deeper look at the data sets, suggests that a fair amount of the 2010 demand has actually been met with the renovation of the Yates. Our survey also found notable demand for a facility with less than 500 seats, with approximate demand of use days around 50. This underscores the frustration expressed by some about their ability and challenge to access time at the Yates. There is unmet demand at the high range of seating, but not enough to achieve a high level of activity as a rental facility and meeting the guiding principles of the committee. Therefore, next slide, please. A conclusion was drawn that to achieve most of the committee's guiding principles about activity and economic impact would mean more presenting, significantly more than was forecasted in 2010. A presenter-forward model of operating means that, in addition to renting out the facility, as you do now with the Yates, the facility would present a curated season of touring performing arts, much like the Esplanade Center in Medicine Hat. In addition, we also concluded that for a new space to be successful, it should enable some existing activity at the Yates to be relocated, especially events that could benefit from more seats. Next slide, please. With the direction of a presenter-forward programming brief, we brought 2 scenarios back to the committee. A scenario of a traditional fixed-seat proscenium performing arts center, again, much like the Esplanade, and a scenario of a non-traditional flexible performance and event center. Both scenarios meet the needs of the community and align with the committee's guiding principles. We'll now take a look at these 2 scenarios. Next slide, please. The non-traditional flexible model would accommodate most forms of music very well. It could also be configured to accommodate many forms of theater and dance. The major difference in this scenario is that, as you can see by the center picture, floor seating can be removed to allow for flat floor uses to take place. This also allows a higher number of tickets to be sold for popular music concerts where the majority of audience members would stand for the performance. We presented this scenario because these buildings offer high audience capacity, which is good for a presenter-forward model, within an efficient building with fewer square feet to build and maintain than a traditional performing arts center. As you can see, the building program consists of 36,000 square feet with a construction cost estimate of approximately $35 million. And you will note the asterisk after that number. I know staff has given you an additional report on capital costs. These costs that we reported as part of our study represent building costs only, not total project costs. So excluded from the cost estimate are external non-construction costs, such as site procurement, excavation, and site development. Total project costs will exceed the number on your screen, and I'm sure staff will make comments or answer your questions on that subject. Next slide, please. A traditional proscenium performing arts center scenario is also a viable option that was studied. We call it traditional because it is the building form that many think of when they think of a performing arts center. It has fixed seats, a balcony, a full fly tower for hoisting fully sized backdrops, scenic elements, and other staging equipment in and out of view. It has an orchestra pit to support fully staged musicals and operas, and an acoustic shell to provide natural acoustics for classical and many forms of acoustic music. In this scenario, the committee settled on a seating capacity of 950 in a balcony configuration. This number of seats would accommodate greater ticket sales to support presented touring events, but the balcony configuration would allow performances that may only fill 600 or 700 seats to feel full, which would help unburden the gates. Because of the size and capability of the stage house and backstage of a traditional performing arts center, they tend to be large and somewhat inefficient as buildings go because of things like hallways, a basement level for the pit, upper and lower lobbies for audiences, etc. The program developed for this scenario comes to 87,000 square feet and a construction cost estimate of approximately $75 million. And again, you'll note the asterisk by that number, that these costs do not represent the total project cost for the factors that we discussed. Okay, next slide, please. The operating forecast for the non-traditional scenario includes earned revenue from ticket sales, ticket fees, facility rentals, and concessions. Expenses are driven by programming, the cost side of presenting activity. There are also expenses for theater and facility operations, including utilities and maintenance costs, and the cost of personnel. In all, the non-traditional model would operate with an 86% cost recovery. This would be considered a high cost recovery percentage in this business. The non-traditional model is in this range mostly because it can support higher attendance at presented events, especially for concerts, and it has fewer square feet. Go ahead and hit the advance button and you'll get the other chart. Thanks. The forecast for the traditional model has the same, the forecast for the traditional model has the same categories of earned revenue and expenses and would operate on nearly $3 million in annual revenue, representing a 50% cost recovery, which is not unusual for facilities of this kind. The programming relies less on popular music than the non-traditional, and more on classical music, dance, touring theater, opera, and other forms of music suited to the space and the market. The main driver of greater operating expense in this scenario is building square footage. Next slide, please. So the comparison is just summarized here for your reference. This concludes our presentation, and Jonathan and I would be happy to address any questions you have, and we can certainly try to hop back to any slides that you would like to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just so you know, member Councillor Miyashiro has also joined us online as well. So welcome, Councillor Miyashiro. Thank you for your presentation, gentlemen. Do we have any questions in regards to the presentation at this time? Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Parker. Thank you very much for the presentation. There's certainly a lot here for us to think about, for the public to think about as well. When you were looking at the non-traditional model, you said standing you can get up to about 1,200 people, which gets into the range of the NMAX. Did you look at all about how a non-traditional model could affect NMAX programs or affect what's happening at the NMAX?
I can say that we did have discussions with Mr. Gallucci about what some of those impacts might be. This would actually allow some of the programming that is done when they are in the 1,100 seat configuration, which is where they use the one end of the bowl for mostly things like concerts, to actually be moved here. There's not a lot of activity that is done in that configuration, and shifting some of that activity to a venue like this would actually open up dates for other things to go on at the NMAX. The flat floor configuration, it's actually not that big. I think our capacity for something like a banquet in that flat floor is on the order of 300 people. So it's really not a competing space to the other kinds of conferencing and kind of trade show work that happens at the NMAX.
Thank you.
Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Seeing two models is interesting to us, but I think what we need is some clarity from the community, specifically those asking for a fine arts facility as to which one they prefer. For us to make some critical decisions going forward, which one are they asking us to pursue so we can move forward? I don't know if the fine arts community is asking.
Or the audio's cutting in and out on my side, but I think the question you're asking is for the committee, not for the consultants.
Right. So the clarity, I guess I'd direct it to Councillor Campbell. Has the committee expressed a preference for one or the other of the two models?
Yes, we've decided that we would prefer the traditional model.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions from members online? Well, seeing no other questions. Wow. Well, Mayor Spearman?
Yes, the presentation that's come forward today indicates a lower cost and a higher cost recovery operationally from a non-traditional model. Is there a rationale from the committee as to why they would choose the traditional model?
Is anyone here with the committee would like to tackle that question? Don.
So while we have these two ladies come to the microphone, maybe you can just restate the question so they can hear it once again so they can gather their answer. What's the question again, Councillor Campbell?
The reason why choosing the traditional model and what the committee decided was the reason we wanted to go with that. This is Don Leidy is here, and Don King.
Thank you for the question, Don Leidy, Allied Arts Council. In reviewing the information that was provided And going back to our guiding principles and the commentary from the performing arts community and the arts community overall, the facility, the traditional model, which would have the technical advances such as the fly, the proscenium and the unamplified acoustics for traditional classical opera, musical theater types of performances. We felt that by going with that model would be meeting the needs of the arts community, the needs that the community has been asking for well over 20 years. Anything else?
No, I think,
That's Diane King
Diane.
that's joined us as well. Diane King at the microphone, just so that our people know.
thank you. Yes, the studies that have been done, which the city has now invested $1 million in, have all spoken to a traditional model in order to meet the audience needs of sightlines. That was something that was really important to people who have enjoyed and appreciated the Southminster venue, but complain constantly about sightlines. They have also spoken to us about the need for it to be, as Don mentioned, to have the amenities that are needed for performing arts, for the wide range of performing arts, and the.
I've got no.
Sorry.
Say that again, sir?
Sorry, I'm just not hearing any audio at all.
Oh.
So yeah, have you not heard the audio for the last minute or just the last few seconds?
I think the last one I caught most of Dawn's comment and really none of Diane's.
Okay.
Is this
First of all, do a test sentence, make sure you can hear.
test? Is this better?
I caught that, yeah.
Okay. Okay, the important thing to the community over the last 20 years through studies that the city has invested approximately $1 million in, and to the latest surveys that we had, were that a traditional model was the appropriate model. That model would actually provide the technical needs that no other facility in Lethbridge could meet. We felt the flexible model could actually be held. Many of those needs could be met in other existing or new facilities that are being built, including the new trade center. It's possible that that flat floor there could accommodate those banquet and standing room rock concert type of audiences. We also heard from our community over the years that sightlines were extremely important to them, and certainly seating comfort was important, and the idea of having 250 fixed seats and 450 folding seats to accommodate 650 seating people to be able to be seated for a performance in a flex model was not something that we feel that the public would really appreciate. And I think those were the main issues.
Thank you, Ms. King. Thanks, Ms. Lee. Question for myself. During the exhibition discussions, there was kind of thought or kind of some encouragement that it would be welcomed to have a facility like this as in conjunction. What is happening with that in regards to a possible discussion or possible partnership with the exhibition board or exhibition grounds? I don't know who could answer that question. Mr. Blake or Mr. Spangler, did you hear of that interest or that conversation at all?
I'm sorry, I just got the piece that you stated. I think about partnership with the exhibition.
That's correct.
The tenor of your question?
That's correct.
Yep. We did talk with the exhibition on a couple of occasions. I think there's potentially some benefit for thinking that way, though they are building a facility that is much larger, many times larger than what this would be. They are also certainly trying to fill that space with as much convention, meeting, and that kind of activity as they possibly can to make their operating numbers work. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for supporting the local performing arts organizations with space so much, and may also make the presentation of touring artists a little challenging as well, as sometimes those events need to be supported and subsidized as well. There's potential for some operating efficiency if you were to have both facilities, perhaps, but we would think that might be the extent. This may, this facility, either traditional or non-traditional, in theory, would give them another space to have keynote addresses or other kinds of events should they want to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. Madam City Clerk, is there anyone online who has a question at all? No, there's no one online that has a question. Once again, every member of council is present at today's. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Thank you. Just on that point, I think it is something that needs to remain open as an option in terms of your comment regarding the exhibition. They are building a large structure. If you were to find an efficiency in co-build, there would be definitely some structural saving. There would be some potential, I think, greater operational saving, and having looking at the exhibition as being the operating manager for it. They certainly know how to program. They would perhaps need some assistance in terms of market, but the actual programming of a facility like that, this is something that is in their bailiwick. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. The conversation, though, today is about the form and function of the work that the committee has done is focused on this. And while we've landed on the traditional facility, it doesn't necessarily mean that council couldn't say, we'd be prepared to support a non-traditional venue. This is about meeting a need in the community. This is very much about trying to move the community ahead in terms of its arts and cultural representation and presentation. It's about local, but it's about bringing in new talent as well. It's about creating a facility that actually opens up our market. The things that we tend to travel to Calgary and Edmonton to see could actually be available to us here in our community, which broadens and makes more people aware of the value of an actual live arts, cultural,
Bill Blake.
presentation. I guess I offended him. Hopefully he's phoning back in. I think members of CIC just need to keep in mind that this is about the form and function. The work of the committee has been about bringing forward a model. It shouldn't be a closed conversation in terms of it's an all or nothing principle. I think there's an awful lot we can be exploring here. And I'll just make my final comment on the issue that I brought up in the past. While we're all at home during COVID, we're tuned into Netflix, we're listening to music, we're pursuing our own sort of cultural and artistic pursuits, and the same people we're depending upon to entertain us and educate us and inform us and enlighten us and keep us thriving during this period are the same groups of people we're thumbing our nose at.
Announcing participant.
Bill Blake.
So I would just ask members of CIC to kind of keep that in their mind, consider the broader picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kaufman. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Parker. Getting back to your operating forecast, under your FTE for personnel, looking at how you have built this possible forecast, are you imagining, because you're doing the presenter forward model, are you imagining those as city workers, so at city wages, or what are you imagining? What have you built into the forecast as wages under the compensation for personnel?
Great question. It's one we wrestled with a bit, and Jonathan, you may want to help me out here in thinking what the benefit percentage was. What we imagined was to keep that open a bit. So what we did is build our forecast as if this were a standalone operation, though we did use salary levels that would be comparable and competitive within the Performing Arts Center and presenter forward industry. We did use city employee benefit rates. So I think this is a conservative look at the cost and staff load for a building like this. It in theory could be done for a little bit somewhat less, depending on if you settled on, sharing management with the Yates or the Exposition or the NMAX or a not-for-profit operating it. There could be some cost savings in, Jonathan, I think we said 10 to 15% cost savings on staffing if you consolidated with an existing entity or contracted a nonprofit to do it. But we wanted to take a conservative view on it.
So along a similar line with your building operations, why is the traditional scenario so much more expensive to operate?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Why is the traditional scenario so much higher in the building operations? What is it about that type of building that has about 3 times more cost?
Yes, it's all about square footage. The non-traditional is 36,000 square feet to maintain and heat and cool and secure and insure. The traditional is 87,000 square feet, so that is very much driven by square footage. There is a little bit higher in theater operations as well, and that is because of the pit, the fly system. There is more kind of equipment, both mechanical and digital, in a traditional to be maintained, and it takes more people and a little bit more money to do that. It is a more complicated building and bigger and more feet.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions from members of CIC? Seeing none, I want to thank both our gentlemen for their presentation, and I know that you'll always be available to answer questions if we do have it through email or through our committee representation. Anything else to add, gentlemen?
No, thank you very much. It really has been a pleasure working with your community and with city staff and members of the community, the whole committee. We just want to thank everybody for their participation, hard work, and really good thinking. We hope that you're able to advance this project in either scenario. I think there is community need that could be met through more investment in the arts and culture sector broadly.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate that. And be safe.
Thank you.
I have the following resolution, 4.1, signed by Councillor Campbell. Performing Arts Center Steering Committee Functional Planning Update. Be it resolved that the Community Issues Committee accept this report and presentation for information, and further be resolved that the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee and AMS Planning and Research be thanked for their presentation. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Parker, and thanks to Bill and Jonathan, although probably they're off the phone by now, but thanks for all the work. The PAC Steering Committee has worked closely with AMS Planning and Research over the past 18 months to get where we are today, and they will, following today's presentation and discussion, AMS Planning and Research will complete and submit their final report to the PAC Steering Committee. In their presentation and report, AMS Planning and Research, of course, have identified 2 facility types, both the traditional and non-traditional. In discussion with the community, putting forward the traditional PAC to council for consideration, and of course, that being said, both options are on the table for council's discussions. So again, thank you for the presentation, and leave it with that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Campbell. Any other members of CIC would like to add to the debate? Seeing that, can I take that as your closing, Councillor Campbell?
Yes.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimous. Members of council, we don't have our next presentation till 1:30. Are you guys amenable to going to our in-camera discussions right now since
Participant exiting.
Since we are together? Would you, or do you want to go
exiting.
after CIC?
Jonathan Spengler.
Members of CIC, are you okay that we go into our in-camera session since everyone is here?
It's Blaine, sure.
Sure, okay. Seems like we're all good. Perfect. So we'll wait for the next 5 minutes.
Yep.
Which is transition to in-camera, and we'll go from there. So, and then members of the certain administration will be staying, of course, if needed. So I just call this meeting of CIC to recess. And we'll say 11:35, we'll start the in-camera.